Hey guys, welcome. I'm happy to have you in my class today, and we're going to spend most of the class in Design Space. I'm going to show you how to use some of the tools in there to kind of hack apart some existing designs and then put them back together to make just the kind of custom sign that you want. So let's get started in Design Space. This is the design that we're going to be making. So here's an example of our finished project so you can kind of see what we're working towards as we go through the designing part. So I first want to give you a brief overview of these actions over here: slice, attach, contour. So you don't have to follow this part here along with me. You can just watch what I'm doing. I'm just bringing in a couple of random shapes from the shapes panel, and then an image of a cat face. It'll give you an example of some of the steps that we'll be doing to make our sign. I'm going to give each one a different color to help us tell them apart as we're going through these different actions. Okay, so if I overlap these two shapes like this, and then select both of them, and when I click slice, then we're going to end up with 4 different pieces. The yellow part gets cut into 2 pieces, and the purple part gets cut into 2 pieces where they overlap. Slice can be really useful when you want to create a new shape or you want to remove something out of an existing shape. Okay, now if I overlap these two, and if I click Weld, then you can see it turned purple because now this is all one single cut. It takes those 2 cutting paths and creates just one. Some of these other ones I don't use as often, but they're useful to know what they do. Intersect is where you're left with the shape, just where they overlap. Exclude is going to cut out the part where they overlap. Here, if we click attach, it turns them into the same color because they're going to not move. They're going to be cut out on the same mat, but it is still going to cut out the outline of both shapes. Okay, another thing to note here is if we weld and turn this into a new shape, you can't undo that unless you just click undo immediately. But if you attach something, you can detach it later. Okay, so this just shows every place where it's going to cut. So if you want to remove some of those cut lines, you can come in here to contour. So let's say we want the ears cut out, but none of the facial shapes. You can click on them in the panel over here to the right, or you can click on them on the image. Okay, so there's your little overview, and you'll see as we use each of those as we go through making this design. We're going to search for some things in images. So if you have a theme for something that you know you want to make, so you want a sign for your bathroom, you want it to fit your lavender theme, you can come in here and search for tub or bathtub or bath, and you'll get a lot of these same sort of images. Then when I search for bath, I'm going to add in a couple of decorative signs that I kind of like, but maybe I still want something a little different. It'll kind of be my inspiration, and I'll pull some of the elements from some of these designs, as you'll see. So we're going to separate these out so we can see each of them. All right, so I like where this one includes the word bathhouse. I like some of the decorative elements of this sign. This one we're just going to get rid of. And like I said, I know I want this shape of the bathtub and not the one that's included in this sign. Next, I'll go back to images and search for lavender and look for a few lavender images that I like. So I've picked 3 where the shapes are kind of similar, so they look like they could kind of go together. I'll add those to the canvas. And for now, they can just stay to the side. We're going to work on this part of the design first. So the first thing that I'll do is bring in a rectangle and lay it over the bottom part of the sign. I don't want to use any of those design pieces, and so I'm going to overlap this and click slice, and that will help me cut away the bottom part of the design, and then I just have the top part that I want to work with. Now that it's a smaller design, it's going to be a little bit easier to do the contour. Like I said, I already have a different bathtub shape that I want, so I'm going to get rid of all of the cuts on the bathtub. Some of these that get kind of smaller, you can look for them over in the layers panel over here on the right, or you can zoom in using the little plus sign on the bottom left. We just want to get rid of anything that is part of that bathtub design. Then you just click off like behind the contour window and you'll get back to the canvas. All right, now I'm going to come in and do the same thing with these large letters. Don't forget to click on the insides of the letters because you don't want those shapes left either. Okay, so now we just have our decorative elements, and I still want to break these apart a little bit because I'm going to move these side brackets to a different location. So I'm going to duplicate it so that I have another one to work with. Here I'm going to click hide all contours, and then I can just click on these 2 side brackets that I want and click on that bathtub again to make it disappear. And now we have just the brackets that I can move independently of the rest of the design. Then over here, I'll click on the brackets to make them disappear, and now I have just the top part of the design. To help get all the sizing and placement right, let's make a guide shape that is 11 by 14, so that matches the frame that we're going to use later. And if you change the operation to guide, then it becomes just an outline. It's not going to try to cut it out when we go to send our project to make it. So when I bring this top part of the design over, I can drag it out so that it's a little bigger. And at this point, I realize that this little loopy part in the middle is not completely centered. And to double check this, I brought in a little circle, selected that and my design, and did a center align, and you can see that they don't actually line up. So using our slice trick and our contour, we are going to fix this in just a couple of steps. So I brought in a square, and I'm going to change it yellow and put it in the back so that I can see that it just exactly overlaps with that little loopy design in the middle. I don't want to catch any of the edges of the straight lines. Once that's in the right place, I can select them both and hit slice. And then I'll drag apart all of the pieces and delete what's extra and just keep this one piece. All right, now I'm going to bring in a second rectangle so that I can slice and just have those 2 lines on the right side. So that one I'm going to delete. So these 2 lines I'm going to duplicate and bring to the other side of the little loop decoration. I'm going to select all 3 and align them to the bottom. and then click distribute horizontally. So now they're evenly spaced. And then I'll attach that together. On the rest of that design, I'm going to go to contour and get rid of those two straight lines. And now I have just the flourish pieces that I can bring back over and center with those top lines. Then I'll take the bathtub and the flowers and make them a little bit smaller and bring them down to about the place where they're going to be in the sign, and then this space we will fill in with the word lavender. Click the text icon and a text box will show up, and we're just going to type the word lavender with a capital L. Design Space has added these categories here. So I am just going to scroll back and forth. I'm going to choose cursive. And then as I go down the list, I like this one, Catch Land. So here's what I'm going to do to kind of experiment and see if this one is going to work. I'm going to duplicate it so that I have another version. And up here under More, I'm going to click Advanced and Ungroup to Letters. So I can move each letter by itself. So I'm just going to move these letters a little bit up and down. I can see already that this font is not going to work because the connectors between each letter are not going to allow me to manipulate them into that wave shape that I want. So in my own practice already, I know that I want the Southern Air font, and then I'm going to choose the capital L from a different font. So I'm going to copy and paste this text box. And then the font I want to use is Analog Script. All right, so that gives me that really curly L, so I can delete the L in my first box, and then these are the letters we're going to work with to make our sign. For this section, I need to ungroup to letters again. I'll start by placing each of these letters through this space in about the place where I think they're going to go. Then I can come in and change their rotation. I can nudge them a little bit to the left or the right, up or down, or even change the size of the letter a little bit. So there's no exact science here. You do want the letters to overlap with each other so that they looks like a connected script word. And I'm going to come in here and kind of reference the original picture that I made. And you can see here I'm working up close when I move the letters, and then I zoom back out to kind of get an idea of how the whole word is looking. How is the shape? Does it look kind of natural? And then when I'm happy with it, I can select all of those letters and hit Weld. And that will connect all of the pieces where they're overlapped, and it will cut it out into one word. Now I'm going to work on putting this sign back together, and we'll add the final words, bathhouse. So again, hit the text icon, create a text box, and I'm using all caps. And you can tell obviously the script font is not going to work or look nice or be readable, so we need to find a different font. I know the font that I want to use is called Anna's Fancy Lettering, Hannah. I can tell right off the bat that I need to adjust a little bit of the spacing. There's not enough space between the two words, and there's too much space around the letter A. So we're going to fix that by just adding an extra space, and then we'll come up here and ungroup the letters again. I'm going to select the B and the A together so that I can move them to the right, closer to the T, And then the B by itself, scooch it in closer to the A, and that looks a lot better. All right, and then of course I actually want to attach those so that I can easily move it as a group. So now I can drag it up to the bottom of the sign and just make it fit in that space. And then one thing, after I'd gotten this far, I noticed that these letters are actually 2 layers each. You can see the top letter has, or the top layer has these little slits in it. And I didn't want to mess with layering any vinyl for this part of the sign. And so I could have done this when I first typed out the word, but like I said, I hadn't noticed. So now I'm going to go through each letter and just hide it by clicking on the little I. And now all we have is just the single layer of the letter, and those will cut out just fine. I'll do just a little bit of final tweaking for size and position of the letters for bathhouse. All right, so everything is a size where I know it's going to fit on our frame. So I can delete the guide layer, and then I'm going to go in and pick final colors for everything. So the light green is the bathtub, the dark green is going to be the accents and the stems of the lavender flowers. So you can change them in the color box, or you can use color sync. For the word lavender, I'm using light purple. And then for bathhouse, I'm using dark purple. And then some of the lavender flowers will be the light purple and some will be the dark purple. And sometimes when I'm finished with a design like this that has a lot of parts and a lot of cuts, I will hit the flatten button because then it just gets rid of that black outline where Cricut shows that the object is going to be cut. And so for me, it just kind of gives a better representation of how this is going to look after I cut and apply the vinyl. And then just make sure that you hit undo. You don't actually want this to be flattened because this is a good time to save the project. Then click make it, and we're going to check through all our mats. And I can see here I've got a problem with the stems of these lavender flowers. It's just a bunch of tiny green pieces, and that's going to be hard to cut, hard to work with. So here's my solution. For those 2 flowers with the green stems, I duplicate each of them. And then I'm going to select one flower group and hit weld, and then the other flower group and hit weld. So now that's one singular cutout. And I'm going to make it green, and that will go behind. And then when I cut the purple, that will be on top. So now I can come in and I can ungroup these little stems, and I can delete those because now we've got this background green layer, and I'll layer the purple over it when I make the sign. All right, now we can do a double check. And when we go to look at that dark green mat, now those are cuts that are going to be much more friendly to work with. All right, so one final thing that I have to mess with, because I am using my regular Explorer Air 2, these cuts are going to be too long. I just have 12 by 12 or smaller pieces of vinyl to work with. So I can't have anything that's longer or wider than 11 and a half. So we're going to use our slice trick one final time to make these pieces fit and work with the machine that I have. So the first thing I'm going to do is slice these 2 lines off of the left, and it's going to look like this. Here's another thing you're going to learn about slicing. You can only slice when you have 2 objects selected. And if one of your objects is actually a few things attached together, it won't work. So I have to come in here, I will click my decorative top layer and detach it, and then hit weld. So now that is all considered one cut, and I can slice that square out. So now I have a part on the left and a part on the right, and each of those will be small enough that I can cut with my machine. The other place that I have that's too long is a bathhouse. So I'm just going to slice the two words apart. It's a natural break, and then they will both fit on my mats. All right, and then the last final thing is to actually slice these two brackets apart. You wouldn't think that they would be too big, but since it considers it one cut, it's going to try and put all that space in between it, and that's too long for my mat. So I will just slice it with one of these squares, and then they will easily cut out much closer together on the mat, and I won't have any problem. And now you can see that everything is going to fit on a 12 by 12 mat. All right, so let's hit continue. We'll connect to the machine and start cutting out this vinyl. So let me know if you have any questions about things that I did in this class, and I will see you around the internet. Bye.